test. So fail test is awesome. If you're pretending to write a program that can handle malloc failures, and you're not using something like fail test to actually check that you are, you're not. And frankly, in a lot of cases, you're so much better off just giving up. Because I mean, every time you will find bugs.
Is there a way to extend the fail testing for malloc functions?
Coming soon, yeah. I'm still thinking about it, but I had to talk to Wright. Okay, so now let's get back to some actual functionality adding because it's so much more interesting than testing. Let's add some options. Who here has used getopt? If you haven't put your hand up, you shouldn't have been in the room. Okay. Who here has used popt? The Samba one that up here. Yeah, pop's not bad. It's like popt, only I think it's what I wanted popt to be. I actually had some interesting discussions with someone who's looking at rewriting popt, and eventually this discussion stalled because he didn't have time, and I eventually thought I'll write him a little example version of how I'd like the interface to look, and next thing you know I had another CCAN module called opt. I did send him a link. If you want to call that popt2, go nuts. It is different from popt in that it's extensible and it's type safe. Type safe is good. You can register tables of options the same way you can in popt and getopt long, but you can also just chuck them in at runtime. And for an example like this, that's the way you do it. Two options here: help or usage or -h, which just prints up. It uses a standard opt helper, opt usage and exit, which generates the usage table and all that stuff. And we have a port option. And we use another built-in opt set uintval, and in fact opt show uintval. I can actually run this. Now, what's interesting here is, and I want to divert a bit into the usage of opt, is that we use the type safe callback module, which avoids the whole classic void star thing. You're handing your callback some random pointer, you change the type, and the compiler still treats it as a void star, so it has no idea that it should give you a warning about that having changed. Type safe callback actually checks that this function here takes the same thing as this thing is here. So if I actually change that unsigned int port to something else, I will get a compiler warning. A really odd compiler warning, but I'll get a warning. So, sorry? Look in type safe callback. A heap of GCC extensions.
No, I mean as far as usage.
That has to have the right type to match that. Just believe me, it works. This is in fact a macro that does the macro magic around the real one. Yeah, look in the mod. There are lots of examples in there. Okay, so type safe callbacks are really important. Now, because it actually builds that example, we can actually run it. And there you go. It prints out help, as you'd expect. Okay. Now, a little bit of divergence here. Oh yeah, and then we call opt parse to actually do the parsing, and then it basically leaves any arguments left in argv that weren't options, and so in this case we just go blah if it's wrong. So very, very straightforward change. Two things to note. One is that it's much more grep friendly. Rather than grepping for port to find out where someone's put the stuff that sets the port, you can actually grep for -- port, and you will find the place they've registered the option. And I'm going to divert a little bit, and this is the only diversion I can afford to do, is to the header here. When you build up an opt table, you do the standard thing in C where you build up a table and the last one is a row of nulls, so they know there's a table at the end. We don't do that. Our opt-end table is in fact not all zeros. It's in fact opt-end, which is 8. 0 is in fact not a valid type value for that field, which is the type field. The reason for that is that one of the most common sources of bugs is that you forget to terminate your table. And it works beautifully because the next thing in memory happens to look all 0-ish. And it works fine for you until something else unrelated changes. So don't do that. It makes it slightly easier to use to have that, but it makes it much easier to misuse. So hard to misuse should always be the aim of library design, and so opt-end is not 0. Okay, so this, however, is still not a real server. It is actually kind of pathetic. If we have a real server, it will need to do something radical like have multiple connections at once. People have these expectations, and there are two ways when we think about how do we handle multiple things to do this. you basically have some kind of select loop thing, or you use threads. Those who know me knew that that was never going to happen, so I did briefly consider turning this into an anti-thread tutorial and spending the time that I actually spent writing this code on actually turning anti-thread into something that I wasn't embarrassed to show to people. But in the end, it was just simpler to go, no, let's go for an event loop style thing. I chose to use T-Event. There are a whole heap of libraries out there. T-Event is a little bit baroque these days, but it's